Hey everyone, just wanted to post a video kind of going over the close reading activity, sort of doing our first close reading activity, not along with you, but it'll be posted after you've already completed the assignment. But I wanted to put this together so that you could then see sort of the work I put into it, and hopefully it would clear up any issues you might have had if you didn't have a chance to ask me, or if you just weren't sure and did your best with it, and it wasn't what you wanted it to be or whatever. This was just a way to sort of look at that again, or look at this again as a group, so to speak, and just sort of go over it. So for your close readings, you're typically going to need three things. I would say you're going to need what you should see right now, which is the close reading handout with the three levels on it. Sort of, I would keep this handy to keep yourself familiar with what goes into the levels, um, until you get to a point where maybe you don't need it anymore, and then you need to utilize it, and you have it for reference if you do. The second piece you will need is the actual close reading that we're doing. In this case, it's Charlotte's Web. And then the third piece is a a Word doc or a Google Doc, something along those lines. I did mention you obviously can type it directly into our class's discussion board. However, and we'll make a note of this, sometimes when you're in the middle of doing it, because this is a web-based application, things can go wrong with the internet. Obviously, it's not a shocker there. So you may lose your information, is what I'm getting at. So I think it is a good practice to put the work in a Word doc that you can just then copy and paste in, or a Google Doc that you can just do the same. Some of you I noticed already uploaded your work via a Word doc in the discussion board, and that's fine. That shows me that you're doing that to begin with, and I think it's a good practice to get into. Just wanted to make that clear. So, yeah, let's just sort of get into it. I'm not going to go into extreme detail here, but I wanted to look maybe at the first page or two of the text and just give you some pointers if you do need them. The few people I saw, this is earlier in the week, obviously, that completed it, looked like they were doing a pretty good job with it. So you may not need to utilize this, but some of you may. So I wanted to do it anyways. So first thing to note is sometimes the formatting on these PDFs is not great. Obviously, you don't want to be doing this to read it. So if you don't know, when you move the cursor around towards the top, you'll see all these little functions, the page numbers and such. You can just click on this little arrow which rotates it, and then you will have a nice normal looking text. Obviously, this is a downside of doing things digital, but you don't have to purchase any books, and I can get you sort of anything I have. So I think that, the pros outweigh the cons here. So yeah, let's just take a quick look at our first page here. And if we were going to just even point out a few things, and this is all fair game, we have something like Chapter 1, Before Breakfast. This sounds really simple and maybe overly simple, but this tells us that we are in the morning, right? That the story is taking place in the morning. So you could put a note, lets us know that this takes place in the morning. Now, that might not have a ton of it might not matter all that much as you go on with the text, and in this case it really doesn't, but it's just a piece of information. It has to do with the setting, it has to do with time of day, and it may be important in other texts. In this case, I would say it does not, but it may be important going forward, and you're not wrong to notice that. Going on, right, even just the first line, where's Papa going with that axe, said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Even that alone is a pretty shocking sentence. I always find it to be a shocking sentence for a children's book, which is, ostensibly Charlotte's Web is a children's book, although it does have a lot of deeper meaning. So if you were looking at where that would go, you'd see in level 1, you have things like word choices, sentence structure, punctuation, typographic things. Okay. You also have things like level 2, like broader formal elements, something like tone. Obviously, we talked about setting before. So, and style also might play in here. So for me, this fits into a few things. One, I think the opening line, right? Let's just say something like, And these, how I'm typing them here is how you can basically upload your assignments. You don't have to write giant paragraphs for each one. You can just sort of do this in note form. The opening line of, hopefully I don't quote, where's Papa going with that X? We'll just do this. Seems a strong one for a children's book. It perhaps tells us that we may be getting more than a standard kids, put that in, parentheses or quotations here, kids story. Something along those lines. And that is correct. I mean, if you've read Charlotte's Web, hopefully you have at some point. It is not just a straight kids book. There's definitely more to it than all of that. Sorry to keep bouncing around here. We go on to say, out to the hog house, replied Mrs. Arable. Some pigs were born last night. Goes on to say, I don't see why he needs an axe, continued Fern, who was only 8. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it. So again, we have, I think, some good moments here, right? So we have the character of Fern, right? And we have information about her that she's only 8, so she's very young. And then we have the parents are mentioned, right? Mrs. Arable and Mr. Arable, right? And this particular section is, I think, really important. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is a runt. Now, to me, runt is a word that always stands out in its usage here because it's, a word, it is a farm word, but it is also a word you can use to sort of disparage or insult somebody. So the use of the word, I think, runt as a, strong word choice, I think, is an impactful one and one that always stands out to me when I reread this book or this section even. This next line, right, is even, I think, more telling, right? It's very small and weak and will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it. Now, not to jump the gun here, but I think this potentially has a lot to do with something thematic and this idea that, things that are perceived as small and weak are bad or less desirable than things that are large and strong. So I think there's something in what E.B. White is doing here where you could say in level 3, which if you remember is things like theme, content, issues, questions, kind of bigger picture stuff, you could be saying that the author, oh, and the font is microscopic. Hold on, just give me 2 seconds here. I want everyone to be able to read this properly. The author, sorry about that, is saying something about how we perceive people in this world / I think society, right? Weak is not as good as strong, right? Small is not as good as large. And I think this has to do with everything, right? And I mean, obviously, Fern, the main character, also fits into this, let's say, theme. So there's your level 3 right off the bat, first page. Now, obviously, some texts aren't going to be this forthcoming. You may have to read more to get thematic pieces, but being a children's book, and that's why we use this as the first example, I think a lot of information is right off the top. We go on, and we'll just stick with the first page here, right? Do away with it, shrieked Fern right here. You mean kill it just because it's smaller than the others. Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. Don't yell, Fern, she said. Your father is right. The pig would probably die anyway. Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet, and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. So a lot of stuff here. Obviously, in do away with it, we have, let's go back here, we have a typographic choice in the italics, right? Let's see if I can do this without messing up, because this computer drives me crazy. Do away with it, right? Obviously, we have the use of italics for emphasis. I can spell, I promise. It's just this keyboard is it's on my wife's laptop and it's smaller than I'm used to. So obviously that's a use of italics, and then there was another word choice used at the bottom of that page. I think sopping, and I think again, a strong word choice. It's a sensory word. Sort of makes us think about things being wet and like kind of soggy. And it's the morning time, right? So there's dew on the grass. We have this idea too of like smelled of springtime, which I also could. Let's go back real quick, and this will sort of be our last one right here. Towards the bottom, the grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. So again, we have this idea of something about setting, right? We know that it's a farm, and we know that it is the springtime because it tells us that. And you can highlight that word right there. Now, the only other thing I would point out, and this is just helpful when you're sort of pulling from a lot of different sources or a lot of different areas in the text the texts we're going to be looking at, is when you find sections, and I won't do it for this because they're all from the same page, is you find the page number, right? We see page 1 here, and it's a good habit to get into after you source something or you cite something like the word springtime, in parentheses, give us the page number. Same thing, obviously all of these are going to be from page 1 because I did not look at anything that was not page 1. But you may have examples later on from page 3, 4, 5, 6, and that sort of thing. And this is basically what you would be doing for each of your close readings. You see you've got, I'm pointing with my finger and I'm not in front of you. You see you've got 3 level 1 choices or options, 3 level 2, and 1 level 3. And that's the minimum of the assignment. Obviously you can do more, and it's good practice to do more, but you don't have to. So yeah, I just wanted to put this little piece together. Hopefully this was helpful. If there's a want for me to go through other texts like this, and obviously we can certainly do this via Zoom during the week, when the texts are assigned, not after they're done. But there will be some more challenging texts coming on in the coming weeks, and it may be helpful to utilize our time doing this. So either way, I hope you found this helpful. And my plan is to also do a similar thing with our journal entries so that you have an example of what they potentially look like. I hope you're finding everything really well, and I just want to remind you, as I've tried to say about 100 times already, just stay in touch with me. Let me know what's going on. Let me know what you can't open. Let me know, struggles throughout the semester. The more I know, the better I can help you. Okay? Take it easy.